Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerd Podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the writer and creator of the Urban Warlord comic series, Germone Williams, here to promote his first issue on Kickstarter. Welcome, Germone.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad that you contact me and stuff like that. It is nice.
Oh, thank you for joining us. But outside my introduction, who is Germone Williams in his own words?
All right. Well, Germone Williams is a comic book writer from the Midwest who enjoys writing gritty urban fantasy stories. Well, gritty stories in general. Prior to getting into the indie comic book industry, I worked with the National Guard for about 8 years, so like a full contract.
Uh-huh. Are you from the Midwest or are you from the South Bronx? Because the story is set in the South Bronx, but you are in the Midwest. So, like, are you from New York or
No.
like?
Yeah, the story just takes place in like the South Bronx, but I'm from around like the St. Louis area. That's where I'm from.
Well, I just wanted to know because I guess there's this huge attraction to New York City, especially when you're writing urban fantasy type stuff or anything set in the city. Whereas in my writing, since I'm from Baltimore City, it's set in Baltimore City, which I guess it's interesting to a lot of people. And I'm like, that's really all I know. I don't really know New York City to write enough about it. I just know that it's got the boroughs and the Empire State Building and what's her name, Statue of Liberty, and that's all I really know. I don't really know enough about New York City to set my story in there. So that's why I was wondering. I was like, you're from the Midwest or are you from New York City? Like, what was the attraction to the South Bronx that made you want to put your story in there?
Well, the funny thing is, the story of Urban Warlord is actually a prequel to something that me and a friend did like years ago. And it was featured in New York. And I wanted to like tell the story of what happened prior to those events and stuff, what built the city up based on, since there's werewolves and vampires that live there, I try to figure out like some of the political and social things that were going on prior to that and stuff, like the policing and things of that nature that changed over time. And I kind of discussed that how like there's a shift that happens, and also the migration. So I really like that came down to the process of me just researching New York all the time, like looking at the map, looking at the city and stuff, placing like fictional stores and things that down. I got a whole map where I know where everything is. I know where certain streets are. So it was really just came down to a lot of research.
Well, you're a lot better than me because being from Baltimore City, it helps that I kind of have a feel for the city. So a lot of those places that I make up, I didn't really make it up. These places that exist, I just made up what it actually is. But what is Urban Warlord about, the series about?
Oh, well, Urban Warlord follows Ernesto Rudolfo, which is a tough teenage werewolf, and his militant fraternity, the Urban Rangers, as they work to save the 1970s South Bronx through political, social, and military means.
So I guess could you elaborate a little bit more? Like you just mentioned that you pretty much did a lot of research with putting your story in the South Bronx, researching New York City and the map of everything. But can you elaborate just a little bit more on your creative process for Urban Warlord as a whole? So it was just a thought in your head to working on it, I guess, working out what each installment will be eventually, and then selecting the appropriate collaborators on this project, and then now you're promoting it on Kickstarter. So pretty much from start, middle to end. How was that whole process for you?
Well, the start, I'm not gonna lie, the first part of of trying to develop a story, I feel like it started maybe like I feel like it came prior to starting this story, really, because I had to figure out like some of the characters and what people related to. And a friend of mine who actually wrote kind of like the outline of what this was going to be. Because and then what I did was just I asked him, I said, hey, can I do something with the story? He said, yeah. And that's what I did. So I went and started to search for something that was similar. So I looked at the movies like The Warriors, for example, and stuff, you know, and 1970s. I did a lot of like reading like history books and stuff and seeing what's happening. Articles. Before I even got to the point where I was writing, I looked at articles all the time. So I was always looking at the New York Times, seeing some of the stuff that was happening. And at that time, 70s, this 1970s, like New York, were going through a financial crisis, especially before like the stagflations happening across the whole nation and stuff, you know? So when I had to figure out like, how can I put like werewolves in a situation where they're back against the wall at all corners? Because werewolves are usually supposed to be in the wild, you know, as we see in most stories. But when you put them in the city, they're usually out of place. And other people might mention that. With vampires might mention that and stuff like that, where it's like, you're out of place, you're not supposed to be here, which integrates with what was going on at the time with, you know, African Americans and some of the Puerto Ricans that were moving there and stuff, you know, where they're trying to establish themselves in like the city and start their own thing. But at the same time, a financial crisis is happening. So I connect those two things together, you know, some things that was actually happening in reality with some of the supernatural appeal to it.
So how was it for you when you started, I guess, searching and eventually selecting the appropriate collaborators for this project that you wanted, you know, to work on this project with you?
Well, that's the funny thing. Like, I didn't know how to start at first. So I really started to reach out through like the Fiverr app. Like the Fiverr app is where I got in contact with a lot of people. Like there's been a few times where I contacted people on Facebook and got some art done from them, but majority of the time is through the Fiverr app, where I kind of got like all my artists, my colorists, letterists, and you know, that's really where I got like all the collaborators from. So it's really paid work, like, you know, commission work and stuff. So
so I guess, so what was it about? I guess, let me see your collaborators here. Was it Ezequiel is his name? Is that correct? And
yeah, this is
JS. Like, so what was it about their work that appealed to you? And was like, hey, you know, that you wanted them, that you thought that they could translate what you wrote down onto the page?
Yeah, I was looking for something like a style. Like my big thing was finding like a style that kind of works with the time. Like I wanted something that was more rough and more grittier and stuff like that. Grittiness was like my big word. And I couldn't go with the classic comic book style that we usually see that's drawn out and stuff like that, because it looks nice and appealing to everybody, yes. But I wanted something that was more grittier and stuff like that. So that's what Ezequiel brought. And also the fact that he can constantly pump out pages quickly. And I started to notice that. So we just, for the last, probably 3 years or something like that, I've been working with him. And he's just consistent the whole time. So I just stayed working with him.
So how did you manage to incorporate your influences? Like you mentioned that, you know, the Warriors, the movie The Warriors, and I guess influences maybe from other urban fantasy, maybe comics, books, wherever it may be, and then the historical influences as well. So how did you incorporate your influences for Urban Warlord, but maintain that this world is yours and not those influences or someone else's as well?
Well, and actually it's funny because that you asked that, because someone emailed me the other day that there was a comic book by Marvel called The Wolfpack that I had no clue about, where it's very similar to some of the premise of the story, you know, some of it. But a lot of time, like really how I distinguish it is the fact that I made sure that it wasn't about being a gang, right? Because the Warriors, it was really about a gang that's doing that, versus this one where it's really about people taking actions in the community to fix it and stuff, right? In a troubled time. So
Almost like the Black Panthers, right? That kind of sounds like that, where everyone thinks the Black Panthers are a gang, but they're more of, they really trying to help fix their community, because they're the ones that started like the breakfast for children, like I forgot what's like after school lunches and stuff like that, and breakfast for the kids, and so yeah, they started that as a way to fix their community, where everyone on the outside looked at them as like a gang.
Right. Exactly, and stuff. It like some people might look at the Urban Rangers as like you're just a vigilante group, because a lot of times they do patrol, or you're just adding to like the violence that happened, because you do have the situations where they fight people in the streets and stuff like that. If it came down to it, saving people that's either being like robbed or attacked for different reasons, because that was a common occurrence that happened during that time and stuff. So I know it, at times it comes off like more like where you have like superhero type stuff, but the outcome, you'd be more like the outcome is more what like an anti-hero would be and stuff, how they handle things and stuff, because we're looking at like the werewolves, they rip things up, they destroy things and stuff at times and stuff, but that became part of my biggest question and stuff like that. Like, can they do something outside of that? Are they capable of doing that? Because they have an other side. We always see that. We always notice that, like with the werewolf, and in comparison, especially when the vampires are there, they're always like second tier. When it comes down to intelligence and organization and anything like that. I wanted to make that different in this situation. I wanted to give it more like light of what they can do and stuff, that they can be intelligent, that they can be organized, and how it can affect things over like the decades, because Urban Warlord is supposed to go all the way to like the early 90s, and you get to see that transition, with people, shifting from being a teenager to adult, some people having kids, and and the influences that they have on their kids and what they do with it later. So it's from the 70s to the 90s. So how many issues do you plan on creating for for that far like that? Yeah, and that's the thing. I had a plan. That I started out with a strong plan of what it was, but I had to extend it more just to give people more character and develop the story more. So now I'm unsure, but I know the basic things that need to happen leading up to the series Blood City, which takes place in the 2000s and stuff. But that's the thing. I know the certain story beats that needs to happen. So what advice would you offer to other creators you wish someone would have told you when you first started? Oh, really? I wish they would have told me about like the Harmon Circle, because the Harmon Circle is my go-to, go-to technique I use every single time I need to construct the story. And so what's that? What's the Harmon Circle? The Harmon Circle is like, they used it for a lot of times for like screenwriting for shows and movies. And it's an 8-step process. And that process starts you from like, it starts with your character in your everyday situation. Like, so they might be working or doing something, but they want something. That's the second step. And then it goes all the way around to like, eventually, I think third step was they come across unfamiliar situation. And then fourth, if it's a series, the fourth step is going to happen for the remainder of the series. So that would be like them adapting to that, And like a good person to go to, I would say, is Tyler Morey. I watch his videos all the time, and he kind of helps you with screenwriting. But I also use that for just writing in general, because it gives you a layout. It gives you a step-by-step process to getting through your story without losing focus and keep that momentum. That's what I think that's the biggest thing about the Harmon Circle. You keep momentum while keeping to the main themes of the story. I didn't know that's what it was called. I remember learning that a couple of years ago, but I didn't know it had a name to it. Yeah.
But throughout this whole process, you creating the story that you mentioned, this is actually a prequel to something else you worked on before, and then doing all of the historical research, the cultural research of New York City itself, and then creating a story, finding collaborators, and then now promoting it on Kickstarter. This is just this process. This doesn't even count like what goes on outside in the real world, taking care of the household and working and trying to maintain relationships. Do you, or did you ever get overwhelmed with everything? Like, did it ever become too much? And how did you manage, or how do you typically manage your mental well-being when it does become too much?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I know recently, it was more with the budgeting that I was trying to make sure. I had to make a big budget switch right before the launch, which was mostly stressful. But outside of that, I learned how to like kind of always manage my time. And the job that I work now, I can become robotic and get things done while also thinking about the story like during work and stuff. And so when I get to break time or when I get off, I can just record anything that I have. Voice memos too, that's on my phone. Like I use that just to keep down like my thoughts and stuff like that. But yeah, it can still, the process, it becomes stressful, especially when, you move into the territory of like unknown, Kickstarter is still unknown to me, even though I take the Comics Tribe like course, which helps me guide me through the whole process. It's still a tricky thing because you never know if you're going to succeed or not,
Yeah. But my last question for you, Germone, is what is your idea of success? I ask that because as creators, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue from our art, we're considered failures, or we consider ourselves failures. Many of us will put our dreams and projects on the back burner or give them up altogether because this career path can be highly intimidating and competitive. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
Quote unquote success for me would be I develop a loyal audience. It don't have to be like huge and stuff like that. That's not my big thing where it's like I need to have like a mainstream audience and stuff, because I understand the story that I'm producing is not for everybody, and some of the content that they have and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. Since it's gritty and stuff, it's not for the average comic book writer and stuff. But my whole thing with like success would be, I would say that just a loyal audience that just sticks with every single issue until it's finished. They connect with the characters, and then if it's anybody that wants to learn about script writing, and I'm still in the process of learning more about it, they learn just by watching it, like as I do when I watch movies or I watch shows, I pay attention and learn like the techniques that they use and stuff, and I hope that'd be success for me, like to teach somebody while also entertaining them at the same time.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard of that answer before. That's a loyal and engaging. I think an engaging audience as well would work as well. But is there anything else that you wanted to touch on about Urban Warlord as a whole that I may have missed? Maybe discuss rewards for potential backers?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things that, recently that I did was add 4 more pages. I wanted to add 12 so bad, but it was going to mess with the weight for shipping all the products. But I did add 4 pages to issue 1 to give you more clarity of some of the characters and relationships and stuff prior to going on the big mission that I can actually explain now. All right. So in Urban Warlord issue 1, you see the Urban Rangers take their first step into saving the South Bronx by attacking a vampire drug smuggling ship coming through the New York harbor on the 4th of July celebration. And that's what's happening there and stuff like that. But they soon discover that their actions will be felt across the whole, like all of New York throughout the 1970s. So that's the whole thing that that's happening there and stuff. But I try to make sure with these 4 pages that I'm adding is showing the relationships before certain actions take place in there that, that can really turn some things around and stuff. So you have more clarity. Same thing with the prologue issue 0, which shows you Ernesto during the 60s, right? So he was, I say it would be 2 years prior to issue 1. And he's 14 years old. He's just coming into his werewolf state. Like around that age period, around 13, 14, that's when they start realizing that they're something different, that something's up with them and stuff like that. So he's going through growing pains. And you see some of the tragic things that happened to him during that time that makes him into what he is during issue 1. But I add 2 more pages in that one too, to kind of show you the last bit of before he becomes the way he is, like the last bit of thing like that seems kind of nice about him that people appreciate about him before he just turns all the way into fighting force.
So are there complications, I guess, working with your collaborators, with Ezequiel and with Jayish, trying to add pages? Is there any issues with that?
No, they're okay with it. Like a lot of times they're real happy. Like Jay, a lot of times when I sent like some of the pages to like the printer just to make sure that everything was going to print out right, and I noticed that everything was just super dark, he caught it before I got the book back. He was like, "Hey man, I noticed that some of the pages might be a little bit dark. You want me to lighten that up for you?" I was like, yeah, because I didn't know how bad it was going to be until I saw it. And I was like, yeah, I need to lighten up. So he had no problem doing that. Same thing with Ezequiel. I just contact him ahead of time, give him a week or so before, because a lot of time I know he's busy. He's also doing like multiple projects at the same time. And I asked him, like, are you going to be available anytime? Because I got these extra pages. And he's like, yeah, I'll be available in the next week or so, or if I'm about to take a vacation, he's about to take a vacation. He's like, I'll start it on this day and stuff. So we always give each other a heads up to know when we're available and when we can do things and how we can, pay for the work that they be distributed out. So
yeah. Have you done this before, Kickstarter before, or like any type of crowdfunding for a project before? Because it sounds like you've had like a better experience than most people that I've spoken to when they first started doing a Kickstarter, especially with your collaborators.
No, this is the first time. Like the book has been done for a while. Like I had, just saving up every single month and then, just paying down a little bit until like that book was done, both issue 0 and issue 1. And so that part was out of the way. Outside of that, most of the things I was learning is from like Comics Tribe. Comics Tribe really lays out what a Kickstarter is going to be, how to set up your budget and everything. They have a community that helps you understand, like if you run into problems, and some people, they've done this before. Actually, I think one of the people that you interviewed was part of the Comics Tribe community.
Yeah, I think he's the one that that does the podcast, and then he does like he talks in the beginning and then does an interview and then the voicemails at the end. Yeah, I did one that was back in maybe December, I want to say, that I spoke with Tyler. Yeah. It just it works. Like he hasn't steered me wrong at all. Like everything that I had my concerns about caught on to it. And that was like one of the big things with the budget. I had a higher budget and I had more rewards, and then read something in small print, made me go back and fix everything, had to shrink it down a lot. Yeah, you gotta read the small print. And so how was it switching from, I guess, the artist person that you are as the writer to now the business person with managing the budget? So how was that for you? Because you said like in the beginning you had a bunch of the budget was higher and you had a bunch of rewards, and then reading the small print and be like, oh, I need to go back and change this and make the adjustments because, I may not have enough profit to, I guess, divvy out these rewards, right, for our budget. So how was that making that switch for you? Are you used to being able to handle money properly or managing it, or how did that work for you?
I would say I'm good at saving money. Like I'm good at saving money, but I ain't gonna lie. It was outside of this, it's difficult because trying to find the right vendors that will like basically meet your funding goals and stuff like that. That's not too expensive, but can still give you quality product and stuff. That took me like weeks and maybe months to try to figure out like some of the like the comic printing companies that I want to use, some of the all those features and stuff like that. That was all new to me, mm-hmm. Just to really like run into that and then try to figure out like, okay, how does this work? And then you got to contact them, reach out to them, and try to figure out how long is this going to take, so I can tell my backers like, hey, you'll be getting these awards here. And then also a big thing that I had to change, which I was worried about, was international backers, because that was a whole nother level for me and stuff. And also added a big expense that I couldn't like really cover this time around. Maybe later on I can do it and stuff, but right now I couldn't really, cover that.
Mm-hmm. So how are you going to have it printed? Like, where are you going to have it printed? I don't think I've ever asked that before.
Oh yeah, it's at first I was going to go with Comic Impressions, and that was the one that was recommended to me. But after like looking at things and seeing how much printed and the way I wanted to get printed, I decided to go with Mix'em. Mix'em is I think a company out of like Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it's not too far from me and stuff like that, so it's easier. I can access it and stuff. So that's the one I decided to go with.
Yeah. So will printing it be difficult? I mean, how does the price go? Because I know that like especially during the height of the pandemic, there was issues with printing stuff for people, like especially with mass printing. So did they give you like a timeline of when it's going to be, how long it's going to take for it to be printed, and like how was the pricing, I guess, compared to others?
Yeah, I know, because at like during this time we have a paper shortage.
Yeah.
So that's also increasing prices too and stuff. Now they do give you a delivery date and stuff, or how long it's going to take. I think this company will take about 5 business days for it to get all printed, right? Well, for this, like the test copies that I'm getting done, which is only 5, it's going to take only like 5 days to get printed, and I should get it by, like they told me, like the 19th or something. Mm-hmm. So at least both companies do give you a layout of what you're getting and stuff, because Comic Impressions is going to take longer because it's from Florida. So I got to wait a little bit longer and stuff to get it and stuff. I did get a test print from them too, just to see like how it will look. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Sorry, I'm asking you these questions like you're an expert. And I was just wondering, I was like, how does the printing stuff work? I've never asked that before.
Oh, no. It's fine and stuff like that. Because I had to dive in deep to figure out what paper to use, because, I wanted to go with all matte paper, mm-hmm. Because that's what I feel like the vibe of the story. And also I want to have people to read it, because if it's on glossy paper, it's going to be shiny. It's going to be glares while you like just trying to read the comic book and stuff. And that's what I didn't want. So, but when I got it, I noticed that dull, like, I know it wasn't matte paper, it was dull paper. Dull paper makes it look like dark. Everything was so super dark. And I was like, I gotta switch up, I gotta find a way to, that's why I think I really just switched over to Mix'em, because they had like the paper that I needed to keep like the glow of the colors while not like losing its quality and not getting too dark and stuff. So that was a big reason why I changed over.
So it's not glossy, is right? Because I'm thinking this from what I've seen on the pages from the Kickstarter, it looks like a lot of stuff is set at night, and I feel like from what you said, it's super dark. So I feel like glossy would be the go-to, but it's not glossy. It's like somewhere in the middle, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like because depending on like what like type of paper you choose and stuff like that, that can determine how bright the colors shine and how dull it is and stuff. Because matte paper, I believe, is supposed to be the right one to like help you out and stuff. But I made sure that also ordered some gloss ones just to see how it looked and like how it would turn out and stuff too, just in case, just in case.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank the writer and creator of the Urban Warlord comic series, Germone Williams, for joining us here today to promote his first issue on Kickstarter. I highly recommend our listeners to consider checking out, sharing, and or backing Urban Warlord issue 1 currently on Kickstarter if they can. All of Germone's socials and website will be listed in this episode's details alongside the Kickstarter for those who are interested. Again, I'm KS Garner, and you have been listening to the Solo Nerd Podcast. Thank you.
Thanks.